Welcome to Robert Craig's 13th in a series of virtual tastings, hosted by Elton Slone, with special guest Mike Dunn, owner of Retro Cellars. Today's tasting is Pomerol meets Howell Mountain, a Merlot retrospective, featuring the 2013, 2014, and 2015 Howell Mountain Estate Merlots. We hope you enjoy the tasting. If you'd like to taste alongside Elton, these wines are available on our website. Also check video details below for links to future live virtual tastings. All right, thanks Elton. This is a song of mine. It's called Maybe. Everybody's searching things that never. And everybody's struggling to find some peace of mind. We're all scared of the unknown, some afraid of the light of day. Bound by fear and ego, how will we ever find our way? But then someday, maybe we'll see each other in our collective reflection, and maybe we'll love our brothers. It's the only way to save ourselves. Save ourselves. No one has all the answers or deserves all the blame. We're our heroes and villains in this never-ending game. Can only change from within and try to be the way. Turn our backs on hatred and stay above the free. And then someday, maybe we'll see each other in our collective reflection, and maybe we'll love our brothers. Yeah, it's the only way to save ourselves. Maybe we'll see each other in our collective reflection, and maybe we'll love our brothers. There's only way to save ourselves. Oh, yeah, save ourselves. There's only way to save ourselves. Save ourselves.
Hey, everybody, Jamie Castro, who is our director of direct-to-consumer trade, commerce and hospitality at Craig, and very special guest, Mike Dunn, who has taken time. He's just finished bottling his 18s, and we just finished bottling our 19s. That tells you everything you need to know about the Dunn strategy versus the Craig strategy. So maybe we need to leave the wine and barrel another year. But for everybody that's come on, I thought it would be a good idea this time after so many webinars. One of the wines that is one of my first loves in all of wine is, I love right bank wines. I love Pomerol. For people that know me, you're liable if I pull something really special out of my cellar, it's probably, Chateau La Gomerie or Vieux Chateau Certain or something from the right bank of the Gironde in Bordeaux, where they make truly great Merlot. And obviously with all the sideways BS and everything, I think California has a, not deserved reputation for making lousy Merlot, but of all places, Merlot is one of the most noble grapes in the red grape variety world, and because of its ability to display soil. And we have a very unique environment on Howell Mountain in which that we grow Merlot. And so instead of pouring you guys what I think is our best Merlot ever, which is our 2018, 18 and 19 were really amazing vintages on Howell Mountain. If you were able to avoid some of the smoke problems, which I think Mike and our place, certainly according to Antonio Galoni, we did. But I'm looking forward to seeing your reaction to the 13, 14, and 15, and there's nobody better to do that with than Mike. But before we get kicked off, Mike, I think, has already been going since noon, since you just finished bottling. And before we get kicked off, I just want to say a special thanks. There are just way too many people. I'm just overwhelmed with your support. We have another sold out show here at Robert Craig. So we only have a little wine at the end. If you guys love these, you're just going to have to remember to buy more initially, though there will be enough to do a little offer. And Mike has been nice enough to send me over a little of it, of he and Kara's very small project, Retro Wines, which we're going to do. So I hope you all, we're going to do 13 Merlot, then 14, and then the 15. We're going to drink them old to young, though I have sommeliers that argue with me to do it otherwise. I always like to drink the most delicate wines first as they've had some age, and then move into the younger wines is my personal preference. So a special hello to the Leahys and the, and the Carols. It's great to, and the Curleys. It's great to see you all in. Too many others to mention, except I did see Duff Meyercourt. And Duff, my God, if you're out there on Nantucket Island, living the life of Riley in that gargantuan, spectacular house, I wish I was there around your dinner table. So hello to you and your family. But without further ado, let me introduce you to one of Howell Mountain's originals. Mike's from the first family of Howell Mountain. And one of the things I was able to do, because Mike was nice enough to send me over 3 bottles. Most of my guests don't give me anything. Tom Altimus drank most of his wine when he showed up to do his webinar. So he drank all his damn 11. Was there anything for the kid? No. So I'm down in Sausalito. I don't have the studio because of, like I said, NASCAR traffic and the fact that we have a very busy afternoon, and these guys refused to let me commandeer the studio. So I'm coming to you from San Rafael, and I think Shelly, you'll come by and say hello here in a second because she's dying to say hi to everybody. Shelly, pop in here and just say hello to the gang real quick.
Hi, I came to get some wine.
That's right. So let me Coravin you here in a second, but the one of the things we offer now is the Coravin from Robert Craig, which instead of $200, $149, which is a great deal. And we can always, I think having these 6 wines, even in my, I don't know, I'm a flaming alcoholic for wine, but even with my ability to consume wine, I think 6 bottles would be too much for me to get through in the next 2 days. So I actually used the Coravin. Jamie, thank you very much for sending it home. And Shelly, I'll get you some wine here in a minute.
Okay.
Let me pop on from Mike.
I want to say hi.
She wants to be the star. All right, without further ado, I hope everybody has a glass of 13 Merlot, and then I'm going to talk to Mike. So Mike, what do you think of this 13 Merlot?
Wow, I've tried all 3 of them, and well, 2 things. I'm struck with the continuity between the 3 vintages, as well as the subtle differences, but really solid wines. But you can definitely tell vintage characteristics from these 3 within that style, and we're well aware of those 13 vintage being very tannic and extracted. The 14 is warm, rich. I mean, it's just really noticeable here. And then the 15s, of course, was that wonderful, you know, weather event, and we got 1 ton an acre instead of 3 for just in a couple weeks. But also, you know, that cooler vintage of 15 is really shining. So, yeah, I think 13. I think it was correct starting with the 13. Normally, I wouldn't start with a 13 because ours is so tannic. But in your case, it's resolved pretty nicely, I think.
Yeah, it was, 13, I think, for us at Robert Craig. For me, I decided to start making Merlot in 2013 because we used to blend all this into the Cabernet Sauvignon, because on Howell Mountain, for everybody that doesn't know, I mean, we're famous for having these very low yields. So you have thicker berries, you have small berries, and so you have this incredible tannin buildup, and you always need fruit that's high color, low tannin to blend to help Cabernet Sauvignon unlock itself. Do you guys have any Merlot on your blocks, Mike?
We have absolutely no Merlot. We have no Cab Franc. We have no Petit Verdot. It's just simply Cabernet.
Wow. Well, see,
Yeah.
that's why I asked you along, because you're the Merlot exit by you're the Merlot expert by proxy. I'm going to take these guys on a little trip here down Mike Dunn Lane. So just remember that we're, Mike, thank you for not sending me any photographs, by the way.
It's supposed to.
So here we are on the summit of Howell Mountain at our place. And to the right of this picture, basically, just when it goes out of screen, is where Mike and Kara Dunn live. So, anytime we get up there, it's great. Mike and Kara are very close by, and Mike's always off riding his bike or something, but Kara comes by for a glass all the time. Maybe I shouldn't bust her. So here's a shot I just took. The canopy is filling out very nicely, even in a drought year. I don't know about you, Mike, but we're just desperate for water after all the power has been out. So we were able to get a generator hooked up on our Candlestick property, and the fire suppression exhausted our well. So we're having to dig a new well up there. So, Mike, if you got a spare 300 grand and you want to lend your neighbor a little money, that would be great. But you can see, what we plan on mostly at Robert Craig, because we have very shallow soils right on the top of the mountain. Most of what we plan on is this 110R rootstock, which tends to do well in the rocks. I wish our affinity vineyard was planted on this instead of 5C, because 5C does not do well in the rocks, and we've always struggled with affinity, getting the water right and everything. So that's what we're going to do. But Mike's father, for those of you that don't know, this is a shot of us bottling. So we just went through the 18s right before Mike went through the 19s. And this is a good representation because it's an endless parade of forklift, handle case, forklift, handle case. It's just a bitch. But for those of you that don't know, Mike's father, Randy, here is a shot from, I had to host, I'm on the board of the Howell Mountain Vintners and Growers, and I had to host a tasting with some of the originals. And so, Mike, do you know all of the characters? Is that Bob Breaksman right there in front?
Yeah, Bob Breaksman, Mike.
And then
Lamborn.
Randy's wearing the hat.
Randy's wearing the hat. Bill Smith in front, who's passed away, and then Mike Beatty with the red shirt in the back, the tall one.
And then is that Mike Lamborn?
That's Mike Lamborn, yes.
Yeah, so these are the guys that founded the Howell Mountain AVA in 1983, the very first nested AVA, around the backyard picnic table at Mike Beatty's house, or maybe the dining room table at Mike Beatty's house. They used bottled wine.
Bob Lamborn is Mike's dad, and he had vineyard before Mike. That's
wow.
Yeah, that's Outpost now. That was the original Lamborn vineyard.
And now it's all the Frenchies, right?
That's right. It got sold.
Yeah, but
that was divorce divorce sale, I think. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, well, Frank's still doing all right. He's getting paychecks from the French insurance company, and the wines are certainly very nice. But this is the original crew, and just so you guys know, I want you to be aware, of Mike Dunn sort of where he fits in. Here's Mike doing something that not many people know. So Mike he used to build bicycles, race bicycles. He's a tremendous mountain bike rider. And he's a hell of a cook as well, though not as skilled as his wife, Kara. He's also a front man in a rock and roll band. So he's multi-talented, but here he is giving Dave Rosari, who got angry with me for not using him to do all of our Twitter feed. So he doesn't talk to me anymore, but he's a big Instagram guy and a great guy. But Mike is here. Is this the raclette that you guys do?
Yeah. So raclette is a Swiss cheese, and this is melted on a soapstone tray built by an artist friend of ours, and we're actually heating it with wood embers in an old pressure tank for the vineyards. It's cut apart and use that as a kind of a barbecue.
And are those barrel staves going into the barbecue?
Oh yeah, those are barrel staves for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the coolest, I have to say, on that crusty bread, that raclette from that soapstone. Oh my God.
You know what's great about it is you're cooking all the fat out, so it's really, really low calorie too.
Yeah. I think I had a bowel movement about a week later after that. I ate so much raclette.
We also had a whole pig. You remember that, right?
Yes, I do remember that. But in case we have any vegetarians on board, Shelley wouldn't let me show a pig barbecue here. But the raclette, I figure, is fairly innocuous. But that was a great day at Dunn. This is when they hosted us. Mike took us into his cave. So this is where you guys house your inventory, right?
Correct.
At Dunn Cellars. I can see the Howell Monk. That was a gang. Here's Mike wowing the group. Wow, God, that's Ty Rich and Tilden and Craig Plouffe, Tom Altimus there. That was so much fun. So this is where you make all the wine at Dunn, right? It's
correct.
Old school outdoors.
Yep.
But so what do you use those big tanks for? Is that for like bottling, pre-bottling?
We actually ferment in those, and yeah, we fill them for bottling. We have almost enough tanks to pick all of our fruit at once.
God,
but yeah, like this year, almost every single tank was full for bottling. But we just use them those 2 times. We ferment in the tanks, depending on how big the pick is, and then settle out in smaller tanks, and then go into barrel a couple weeks after picking. And then during bottling, we fill up those, probably 4 of the big tanks, Howell Mountain every year, and then 4 of the smaller tanks are Napa Valley. But this year was a much bigger year. So, and then
that's terrific.
Yep.
Well, I mean, Mike, a lot of people think that your father is still making the wine at Dunn. And I think I have to say for myself, when did you start? Was it 2002, the vintage that?
I started in 99, but in 2002, I was able to kind of take over the cellar and make some cleanliness changes and some barrel changes. And, my dad needed some help, and he was overworked, and there was nobody really in charge in the cellar. So I slowly learned what to do from him and from other folks that, the wine business is very generous. People are always there to help you. Even today, I think, I mean, if you have an issue, you can reach out to friends. And so I slowly learned how to fix, issues as they arose and try to make this a more efficient operation. And just to back up, my dad made a good living on being extremely frugal, and to a fault. And eventually you reach a size where you actually have to buy some equipment. And so that kind of fell onto to my shoulders to pry money out of his hands so that I didn't have to pitchfork grapes all the time, So, I mean, there's a lots of stories about, purchasing used equipment and demos and stuff, but obviously a huge, tremendous improvement in how we function at the winery. We're still a really primitive winery, believe it or not. We don't have a sorting table, for instance. We don't use wooden ferment vessels or concrete eggs. We're very traditional, but we're also extremely efficient. And so
God.
Yeah.
We're gonna call you guys Cro-Magnon. You should do a cuvee called Cro-Magnon cuvee.
No, I think Neanderthal is more like
Yeah,
it.
no sorting table. Well, I have to say, Mike, since since your wines have come to the Vogue, I've never liked Dunn more. I mean, I have always respected the wines, but you know me, I like clean wine.
Yep.
And the wines I think, are just really showing the vineyard now in such a great way, that you've eliminated so much of the infection in the wines. And you can see that the wines to me taste more modern and really nuanced. Whereas, so I have really loved the progression, under your time. And there, of course, is Randy Dunn. Is he still doing the work? Is he still driving a forklift and working around there?
No, he normally doesn't drive a forklift. He still drives a tractor. He'll load pallets into the wine service co-op truck. This year when we bottled, we actually had to unload wine as we bottled it because we didn't have space. He's always wrenching on something. He's still really hard to get out of the vineyard when it's time to pick. He wants to make all those decisions still. So, and I let him most of the time. Every once in a while, I have to kind of urge him to start picking because, he's just hesitant to start. But yeah, the guy can fix anything, eventually, and he knows a lot about a lot. And but he's 74. He had a triple bypass last year. He's had 2 hips replaced. You can't be lifting. I've never seen him lift barrels, honestly. But he's not a big guy, but he's always was a really strong, like Popeye forearmed, wrench on anything, weld stainless, taught himself to do all kinds of stuff. So a real traditional winemaker of the past that could wire that pump and, fix the truck, you don't see that kind of guy anymore. It seems like,
I mean, it was amazing, Mike, when you were nice enough, when you were up there, and the only one crazy enough to stay when they evacuated us last year in the fires, and we were having trouble getting our chiller restarted. It went out. There was a problem with the generator coming on, and Mike was nice enough to say, "Hey, I can get my dad to fix it." So fortunately, one of our guys that knew the chiller was able to get through the fire line. But thanks. I mean, you've just been a great neighbor. But I really enjoyed your contribution to the wines. And when you taste this 13 Merlot, what do you think is the Howell Mountain signature that you find in the red wines from Howell Mountain? I tasted in retro wines. I tasted in Dunn. I tasted in Robert Craig, because we're all minimal. I just want to know your opinion on how these Merlots to you show Howell Mountain.
So I can't speak to other Merlots because I don't have a lot of experience drinking Merlots, except in some blends. To me, Howell Mountain's got obviously an extraction, and a tannin grip. And that's what's interesting is this Merlot, even though it's not a tannic varietal, it seems like this is pretty structured wine. So that to me says Howell Mountain, or mountains in general. But the herbaceousness, and it's the lack of a better word, but there's spices and herbs in Howell Mountain wines that seem to be, like I get cumin a lot, for instance. I get these characters that they're not overtly fruit, they're secondary. Obviously these wines are very fruit forward, but there's more complexity there that I would consider Howell Mountain as well.
I agree, really, Mike.
Okay.
I mean, that's interesting that you say cumin, because I have always said it has like a green green sort of thorny underbrush, yep, and like a sort of a ground white pepper and minerality. But I never really could put my finger on sort of that herbal. It's not unpleasant. It's not like pyrazine, but it's this really secondary nuanced thing. And it could be that spice just could be cumin. That's very interesting.
I mean, I was just reading something about Garrigue, right? That aroma from the provincial, countryside, the type of vegetation that you have growing. Like we have a lot of manzanita up here, and madrone and oak. And that if since we had this fire event here. We were on a panel of a flash détente expert, a guy that treats fruit with extreme heat and traps this flash water, and you can actually smell compounds in this water that were absorbed by the grape skins. So the fact that we're surrounded by manzanita and coyote brush and things like that, those all can kind of lend some sort of compound to the fruit as it's ripening. And for sure, there's something up here in Howell Mountain that has a spice character that I wouldn't call it baking spices or anything. It's more of that brambly, and
Yes.
like I said, it's not green, but it's I don't know. It's really noticeable in the Petit Syrah, for instance. And also, if you're not picking, extremely ripe, you're allowing that stuff to shine through a bit too, right? We have a limited window of ripening up here. We don't hang stuff till November normally, if we if we can. But so all three of these wineries to me really have that a strong likeness, but which I really glad to see, because obviously you guys know what you're doing, but you get to show those vintage characteristics, so they're subtle, and it's really what I think it's all about. I mean, you're not making the same wine. You're not making Budweiser every year, right? You want to show some differences, and but you also have to have a consistency and a track record, and that's why it's so important to own your own vineyards, even though they're expensive as hell. Elton can tell you all about Candlestick, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I can see, Jamie, that we're getting some chat questions rolling in. And hey, everybody, I should have told everybody first, we're going to start with the 13 Merlot that Mike and I are discussing right now. And then we're going to do 14 and 15. And sort of the theme is, what is Howell Mountain giving to these wines? And in my mind, Merlot is able to display so well what Howell Mountain has to offer. And that's why I really wanted to do one exclusively of Merlot, because starting in 2013, I mean, I've been doing the blendings at Robert Craig and making the call with the winemaking team on what goes where. And every year we have these blocks of Merlot from the estate vineyard, block 3, which I'll show you here in a minute on screen, it just tasted so otherworldly. And I thought, God, it's a shame to just blend all this into the Cabernet every year. And eventually I said, well, I'm just going to risk going broke, and we're going to bottle and produce a Merlot. And in the first year that we did it, I remember we did not have enough Spring Mountain to send out for a club release. And so we included some 13 vintage Merlot. And oh my gosh, the emails I got, you would think that I'd taken people's children on a drunken bus ride or something, but people just excoriated me by email for substituting Merlot. I guess they didn't read their email where we said we were going to do that. And then Rachel, being who she was, she just said, well, just try it. And if you don't like it, we'll take it back. And then not only did people accept the Merlot, but everybody said, hey, I need another case of this, or I need another 6 bottles of this. So it worked out great. And for us now, Merlot has gone off without a hitch. We made more of the 2015 from Candlestick, but that's the first edition of Candlestick Vineyard that we bought from Duckhorn in the wine. And the wine just achieves, I think, an even greater gravitas. But so now let's do a little taste of the 14 Merlot. And then I want to try a couple of Mike's wines as we go on here. So this 14 is like, oh my God, it's like butter. The 13 to me, I think Stephen was frightened of pushing that wine out because the tannins were coming out so hard. And so he didn't really extract like crazy. And 14, we got the extraction without this, without even having to try very hard. I mean, the color just came pouring out of the wine. 13 and 15 were 2 years that were extremely tannic, and just amazing to me. The 14 has this tremendous balance to it. It's much more welcoming in some ways than the other two, but I think this wine is going to live a long time. What do you think of the 14, Mike?
I think it's stellar. It's my favorite right now of the 3. It's also for us at Dunn, we had a lower phenolic development, as you suggested, in 13 and 15. Those were quite a bit higher, and but it was an approachable wine. And yours, I mean, ours tended to be elegant and a bit subtle. This thing is fairly rich, but not over the top. Like I noticed your alcohols are all the same from year to year. We had a real tough time with alcohol management in 14. It was hot. It's one of the hotter years for us. 04 was also a really hot year. I think the fruit's outstanding in this particular bottling.
I love it. And for your information, Mike, I just don't want to change the label every year.
Okay.
So I just label everything at 14.8.
Okay.
But the 14 is the one that is actually close to 14.8, whereas the 13 and 15 are like 14.2, 14.3.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, gotcha. That makes sense. We actually, for your readers' edification, we actually removed alcohol in 14 from Dunn. We moved about 1% because my dad wants them to be under 14. It's a long story, a long
Wow.
subject. Yeah, I am on record as disapproving of it, but in certain vintages where we wouldn't have had the hang time on 14 if we didn't. I mean, we could add water as most people do, but and we do as well. But you know, our neighbors between the two of us, Outposts, are well known for watering back pretty ripe stuff, and you know, we're known for de-alking. But that's my dad's kind of soapbox that he likes to. But anyway, 14 was a vintage that just for Dunn, it's really nice coming after a 13, which is really tannic, and then a 15, which was minimal yields and also really tight, unyielding. I think the 15 is going to be tremendous down the road, but that 14 right now is, you know, everyone's party favorite, you know.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe that it's been 7 years and the wine is so young. I mean,
Hell yeah.
these wines are not even getting out of bed.
I would say
me,
that's a Howell Mountain characteristic too. That's a great point. I think that the longevity of these wines and mountains in general. I'm not just going to say Howell Mountain has it, but like you said, I mean, these wines, I like to see 5 years after bottling, and we're in barrel for almost 3 years, and then 10, another 5, and you're just still, they're babies. So that extraction, those small berries, the high skin to pulp ratio, it just yields these just tremendous ageable wines. And then, you know, if you have a year like 14 where you don't quite have the phenolic development, you drink it sooner. Put that 13 down, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the 14 by the numbers, it has some color to it, and I just think it's incredibly smooth to me. The what I love about these Merlots is how they get this Bordeaux nose to them. They get that real sort of sweet, sort of Bordeaux barrel, exotic vineyard perfume, and then they just stay young. But Jamie, let me know, do we have any questions? I can see the chat blowing up. Usually I try and shut that off and just do the Q&A, but Jamie's handling the chat for us.
No real questions yet, just some comments, and but people are enjoying what we're doing and just kind of wanted some guidance as to how to get started, but I think we're good so far. Excellent.
I mean, if you're like Mike, he said he drank half of these wines yesterday. So you know, you can read ahead. But let's go back. I'm going to go back to share screen, and I have to say I apologize to everybody. It's so interesting speaking to Mike about Merlot and Howell Mountain winemaking, and then I love to hear him say, you know, Dunn, we're known for de-alking. I don't think you're known for de-alking, Mike. Oh my God, he's probably going to break down that wall here in a minute. But it is funny. I mean, it's open kimono here. But everybody shoots to harvest and just, you know, get what you want from the harvest table. But the wine is a reality. It's funny that Randy won't go over 14. We label everything at 14.8, but the alcohols are generally 14.1 to 14.5 is kind of our range. And, you know, that's very, to me, I would just let the wine be, maybe if it wanted to be 15% and it wasn't out of balance, then I say, what the hell, you know? and Brett can't live at 14.9 and over, right? So you go ahead and do that anyway.
Yeah, it's a big subject, but I agree with you. And we also lie in that 14.2 to 14.4 range without removing alcohol. So it's not like we're removing a lot. It used to be the taxation line. So below 13.9 was one tax bracket and above was higher. My dad started making wine at Cambus in 75 when nobody would pay that higher tax bracket. Wines were cheap. I mean, keep in mind, our first vintage of Dunn, the 79 vintage, was $12.50.
God.
We just bottled our 40th, which was 2018, at 135. So add a zero over 40 years. I mean, come on.
That's 135 for Dunn Howell Mountain. Yeah. That's a bargain, man. I mean, that's a tremendous price.
Bullshit. We're gonna raise it now.
Yeah.
but seriously, it's old school, and he draws the line in the sand at 13.9. I'm more flexible as you are. I think 15.5 is pretty high. But you could also argue there's wines where that's imbalanced. It depends what the tannin levels and the fruit levels are. Will it age as well? You probably know more about that than me, but there are exceptions to every rule. There are high pH wines that age. There are high alcohol wines that age, and vice versa. You generally think of acidity and lower alc as a result of picking at a higher acidity and lower sugar. You have lower alcohol. Those wines tend to be more stable microbiologically, but maybe they take 20 years to even be drinkable. So it's not a number, right? And my dad ironically doesn't pick by Brix levels. He picks by flavors. But when you have a vintage like 14 where we did not get the hang time, we had to let the sugars climb past the levels we like to see. It can be a useful tool. Most people would use water and then dilute that must. In the presence of the skins, you could argue that you're just replacing what fruit, the skin or the water that was desiccated in the vineyard. In other words, you have shrivel, you're replacing that water. We didn't necessarily see that in 14. We didn't see that in 19. We had really high sugars in a vineyard with no shrivel at all, and the flavors still weren't there. So it's that classic battle. And we've got climate change. We've had some wintered years and whatnot. So, but to rely on it year to year to dial it into the label of 13.9, that's not my thing. It's a lot of work. It's filtering the wine. It's not fun.
I'm with you. I have a range. I mean, to me, I'm opposite sort of where the winery started with Bob Craig wanting to get everything ripe and be super drinkable and approachable on release. And I've gone backward down to super classic wines. And, well, let's take a minute here and detour. I want to talk about your retro project while I have you here, Mike.
Okay.
Here's a shot of you guys at Harvest in 19 on generator power. That's what we all do, right? I pulled these off Instagram. This was a shot of your dad and got our other neighbor, Bob Foley, who used to make his wine at our Candlestick property. And there's a good shot of the winery. Remember, we did our Instagram thing there. And then here's where everybody ended up out on our Candlestick property. And there's no Mike Dunn, but there's like, I don't know, six bottles of Dunn Cabernet on the table. I love it, Mike. So those guys stole it from you.
I think Michael Nguyen scared me off that night.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy with the big glasses.
Yeah. Oh, he's a treat.
Oh wait, man. Look at that guy licking his wife's ear.
We're getting tongue in ear. That's Ben there and Craig Plouffe. Oh my God, what a crew that was.
That was good times.
Let me see here. Merlot. So these are the blocks, people, that we're using for Merlot. You can see we've converted from Cordon Prune to Cane Prune, which I'm a big fan of, Mike. Because
we are too.
So we're using Cane Prune. You can see those old cordons are kind of left, and now the canes are coming up in between. The Merlot on the Winery Estate Vineyard is as you drive up to the winery, it's on the immediate left-hand side of this photograph. And You can see on the right side, they've finished with the leafing and they still have to do it on the left, but this is why we pay almost 25 grand an acre to Pete Richmond and Company. Farmed with toenail clippers is their motto. And so here's a good shot of the Merlot block. It's on your right-hand side of the driveway as you drive out, and really just super, super low yield. I'm pretty impressed. You know, the canopy was way behind this year because it was so cold, Mike. I don't know if you guys experienced that, but all of us, it's really come on. I was like, oh my God, we're not even going to have a vintage. You know, it was 29 degrees up there just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. No, it's been weird.
Yeah, right at set. So here is how this is your you know, pre-pruning. I think you had on your Instagram that this is your pre-prune regimen up there, and
This
you can
is the
see that
straw,
really.
yes. Yep.
So what is the soil type on this vineyard that you have here? This
It's,
super bright red soil.
Yeah, it's Aiken, stony clay, reddish, high in iron, lots of potassium. It's the vineyard is not dry farmed, but it's not watered a lot, and you know, Syrah grows really readily, so there's a lot of canopy work if you keep it really happy. And so I've kind of just keeping it chugging along. It's only about 2 tons.
Wow.
Yeah, I started. My first vintage was 2016 on the Syrah. You'll be trying the 17.
All right.
Yeah, the 16, the canopy wasn't quite developed. We got some a heat spike in August, and I had to pick this stuff in early September. So it's quite a bit sooner than the Cabernet. And
Well, let's take a quick detour. I want to, Mike, you were nice enough to give me 3 bottles of wine here, which I have Corvin, and they're going to be gone over the weekend, I'm sure. But this is a Retro Cellars label that Mike and Kara have done themselves. And Kara is also from a first family of wine. Her father is Bob Pacoda, and who recently passed away. So I'm so sorry for your family's loss. It's like we're losing the entire second generation that formed the Napa Valley, it seems, right now. But so what is the source for your Zinfandel here?
so Childs Valley fruit, it's east of Pope Valley, heading towards Lake Berryessa. It's a little bit cooler valley, a little bit higher up than Berryessa. Volker Isley has a winery there, Green and Red, and this came from a winery called Rust Ridge, and old vines for this area, 40 plus, essentially dry farmed. And I was dropping some bins off there to pick up some fruit for somebody else, and found this. They had some Zin, and the Bialy was buying it at the time and had a couple tons, so left over. So I went and tasted it, and I'm like, wow, this is really acidic and kind of groovy fruit. I mean, good color. And I don't really know my Zin that well because I grew up making Cabernet, and so I bought some. And my dad, classic, he sticks his nose in the tank and said, "What's this crap?" He said, "It smells green." And I'm like, "It's Zinfandel." He's like, "What the hell are you making Zinfandel for?" And I'm like, "Well, do you like Zinfandels that are being made nowadays?" He's like, "No." And I said, "Well, maybe you like this one."
That's so funny, Mike.
He's never told me he liked it ever.
Well, that's every time I see Randy, I'm like, Randy, how are you doing? You know, I see him all the time, and he always says, "How are things up on that windy rock, Elton?"
Yeah, right.
You know, he's a one-off. But so, Mike, I got to tell you, this wine, people, what's the retail on this Zinfandel?
$40.
Man, you are old school Napa, brother. That is, this wine is magnificent.
Not even a couple hundred cases. It's got neutral French oak, which is probably unusual for Zinfandel. It's under 15% alcohol, which is also unusual. I essentially made it like a Pinot. I don't make Pinots either, but what I gather is a Pinot. It's a thin-skinned varietal, right? It's got very little tannins. You got to be really careful with the wood profile.
It's beautiful, though. That's why I love the way you've treated it. I'm just astounded. Jamie, I promise I'm going to save these Corvin over the weekend. I'm going to bring them into the office. So the gang can try them. We have a rabid bunch of alcoholics in the office at Craig too. So you guys,
For sure.
I have really I'm really tickled with the Zinfandel. Unfortunately, that vineyard is yanked. So I'm going to buy some fruit from Green and Red, which is just right across the street. And it's a really neat terrace vineyard, pretty high elevation. It's fun to make a wine that people don't want to like, because Zinfandel has kind of a bad reputation, kind of like Merlot, I guess. And yet people stick their nose in it, taste it, and go, "Oh my God, this is great. What is this?" And
except for Randy.
Well,
except for Randy.
He's just jealous.
Bah, humbug.
He's a pretty competitive guy, and he's made a lot of wines in his life, but he still likes to be in charge of all that stuff. But so I started Retro with my wife, basically, so I didn't have to listen to his shit anymore and just make my own. And he gave me lots of crap about it, but it taught me so many things. When you have your own money invested in the wine program versus working for somebody else, there's a whole lot more learning. The learning curve is much steeper when you're spending a lot of money. And so I started with Petit Syrah that my dad sold that we owned, and then I branched into Syrah and some Zinfandel.
Let's talk about your Syrah real quick. So that's my wine number 2, and this is 17. And in 17 on Howell Mountain, everybody, we had 0 smoke issue. It was clear as a bell. Whereas in 18, we did have some smoke up there, but the people that managed well and picked at the right time were able to avoid an issue. But 17, where did this Syrah come from?
I planted this at my house, so it's about 100 feet below Robert Craig. It's about 2,100. You're what, 23?
Exactly.
Yeah. So 200 feet below you, but a couple hundred feet above our winery. I planted it in an old apple orchard. It's 3/4 of an acre, but 5 by 6 planting, so tight spacing. So it's about an acre. This is where I started. I got rid of Roundup. This is organic. It's never had any glycophosphates. I weed it by hand. I farm this as well as my Petit Syrah myself. Nobody touches it really but me. And got in, in a row cultivator machine. Started dabbling in what we were doing now at Dunn overall. I wasn't able to make a vintage till 16 off it. It took me 2 years to find some clean budwood. I was going to plant Grenache here because Outpost has Grenache right next door to this. And couldn't find budwood. It's a long story, but anyway, I got some really tight berry Syrah, really small berried Syrah, and I'm really happy with this kind of blue fruit character and this clean. There's some peppery characteristics, but it's not gamey. It's not meaty. It's also much quicker to market than Petit Syrah. It doesn't have that tannic load, right? This is a 17. My Petit Syrah is a 14. It's that's what's ready now for Petit. It's still an infant. So it's been a really fun experience. I've been able to make Syrah from some plants that my dad has here for years. So I learned, I'm learning from my mistakes with his wine. But one of the things I learned is you can't put it in new wood. You got to be really careful with it. It just absorbs wood. So unless you like, drinking oak barrel juice, you got to be really careful with this stuff. And once again, people say, "Oh, why would you plant Syrah? Why, it's hard to sell." Well, you only make a couple hundred cases of it, and you farm it by hand, and it's pretty good.
Well, we grow some Grenache on our property on Candlestick and a little Syrah that are both Alban clone, and they're wonderful.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so if you want some clean budwood, we have some over there, cool. And we can also give you some diseased budwood. So we're retraining the Syrah back to the Scion now.
Oh, really?
We're hitting our deal. Let's come back to the Petit Syrah, the elevation, and I want to start on 15 Merlot for all of our people. This wine to me, oh my God, Mike, is this your new puppy?
This is our new puppy.
Oh, look, he just looks like a gangster.
He's a rescue from, they found him walking the streets of Modesto, so we know he's got some pit bull in him, but he is, oh my God, you should see my arms. They're all scabbed up, my ears. He's a little love bug. He's literally, in 1 month, he's probably gained. Well, he's more than doubled in weight. Yeah. We haven't had a new puppy in 20 years, so it's been really awesome.
Oh, Mike, he is just, what's his name?
Bo was his name that he came.
Oh.
Yeah, we're gonna keep that. I call him Bo Piddly, but that's because he can't seem to keep it intact. But there you go.
Well, hey, I'm just cruising past. So we just had Bud Break and Fruit Set. Here's what you've been through. That was 17 bottling. I pulled that off Instagram, Mike.
Oh,
and
that was COVID bottling. Yeah, that was neat. That was neat stuff.
Oh God, yeah. I see everybody wearing a mask.
What crazy times, man.
There
we go. That candlestick.
Well, so this is the stick, and the Merlot block is that one in the far side of the picture, in the upper portion. So basically, the Merlot is the last block that you see that goes up that hill.
High on the left side.
Exactly, and it just makes absolutely ass-kicking Merlot. And then we have another block that is out of the picture that's down. Gosh, I don't even have a really good photograph, but this is the Merlot. It shows you more effectively, I think, how steep the vineyard is from this angle. Of course, we have Malbec growing on the terraces there, but
what a great purchase, dude.
Hey, I tell you, we got in at the very last minute before a normal human being that doesn't have $1 billion to spend could do it. And so I don't have a 401k or a savings account, but I do own a quarter of this spectacular vineyard.
I want to tell all your participants that in the forefront of this picture, that is all gone.
Yes. It's hard to imagine from the fires, but you can see that just gorge all the animals, that everything. It's just unbelievable what's happened out there, but it's coming back, and we needed a fire, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't need it economically, that's for sure. But so the 15 critically Merlot includes a section of this vineyard is in, and now is predominance of our Merlot program at Robert Craig. So this is where Duckhorn used to make their Howell Mountain Merlot, and a wine they called the Discussion, which was Cabernet Merlot, Zinfandel, a little bit of Syrah in there, I believe, as well, that sold for 140 a bottle. But you know, this is one spectacular vineyard. So combined with our estate vineyard, you know, it just makes a really amazing, powerful glass of wine. So to me, the 15 has an extra dimension that the 14 and the 13 that are straight ahead does not have.
Elton, can I break in with a question?
Yes, you may.
So Larry and Jan Fiedler were asking, what foods would you pair with each of these different vintages of Merlot?
Well, since I've been drinking Mike's wine and my wine, and I'm probably just going to put the Corvin aside and go straight for the corkscrew, it may be Taco Bell. You know, to me with Merlot, I follow the Richard Olney guide, which is that the more complex the wine, the more simple the food, I think, that goes with it. And so to me, Merlot is tremendous pizza wine. I'm not talking about lousy pizza. I mean, great pizza. And it's also great with short rib. Cara Dunn makes one of the best risottos I've ever had in my life. I can imagine Cara's wild mushroom risotto would be absolutely perfect. So Merlot is great because, unlike Cabernet, it has a wider range of foods that you can pair with it, because it just doesn't have that hammer that Cabernet has that says, I need steak, everything else be damned. What about you, Mike? What would you say?
You know, the guy that's working for me has been hooking us up with Liberty Farm duck breasts. And, you know, you can do a reduction on those, but I could see, because it's fatty and, but, you know, lighter than a steak. And this duck it's really easy to cook. put it in a cold pan, turn it up to medium, and you literally go like 8 minutes and 2 minutes or something. It's done. It's amazing. There's some fat there that you have to drain off, but that would be one of those. Maybe quail. We do a marinated quail, and you cook it on a Weber, but you put green grape cuttings on it, and you get kind of a smoke, but you do it on indirect heat. And they go to Sunshine Foods and pay through the wallet for that stuff. They're really good. But yeah, this is a fairly. I think this would be a fairly easy wine to blend with. Like you said, it doesn't demand something. You could probably pair it with Chinese or something too. I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty flexible that way. I'm not really stuck in the steak, cab, and I mean, I just drink. Like you, I'm an alcoholic, and I just drink whatever I feel like and eat whatever I feel like. But there are people that are really good at those pairings, and that's a gift. But nothing pairs with salad. I still haven't figured that one out.
Yes, that's the rhyming with orange of the wine business.
Or like blue cheese, maybe kind of hard to pair with. But I know they're pairing. I just, but yeah, man, I really enjoyed these wines. Thanks for sending them to me.
Well, Mike, what can I tell you? I've so enjoyed having you on. We just didn't. I haven't had enough time. Do we have any more questions, Jamie?
We can spend 4 hours. You understand that? This is just scratching the surface, right?
That's right. You're going to have to come up and see Mike and me for the. I think we have to do some sort of. I'm going to have to hold some sort of event up there for all of my guests. But Altemus, the last time he came to Mike's house for dinner, he said, "I'll bring the beef." And that's right, Mike. You were out of town, but Mike.
I heard.
He had it all marinated. Everybody was starving. Everybody been drinking since noon. It's about 7 o'clock at night, and Tom comes up there with this huge full on fillet, just a giant roll, and just as he's trying to hand it to Carrie, just drops it on the gravel driveway. So that was, it was, it was classic. So if Tom, if you're watching this, I love you, buddy. Thanks for coming on. But look at this. Mike gave me 3 bottles of wine. But I think of these, Mike, I think 15 is my favorite of all of these. I don't know. Jamie, what about you? Any thoughts on the 15? Are you drinking these?
I am actually, and I do love the 15. I love the 14 as well. And I agree that in some capacities, maybe it's the most easily drinking wine that, between the 3 vintages. But I like the 15's complexity. I like that. I like that. I feel like you have to let it sit and you got to do a little swirl. And every time I go back to the glass, it kind of offers up something different. So yeah, I don't know, 14 and 15. Not that the 13 is bad by any capacity, but
what I'm gathering too is that the oak profile in the 15 is really I don't know if it changed a little bit, but it's definitely prominent and very harmonious. Really, it contributes quite a bit to the 15, and I think the 15 is really opened up sitting here. 14 vintage, we like to joke and call it slutty. I know that's a terrible word, but it's one of those vintages, right? And the 15 is more reticent and tight and unyielding. But your 15's got some good oak in it and some flesh. And once it kind of gives up a little, it's not so shy.
Yeah, it'll sweeten up a little bit as this wine gets a couple more years on it. The oak's going to integrate a little bit more, and the wine needs it. It's so big. But I'm finishing up.
I'm not saying it's over oak. I can just it's a good quality to it. Whereas
no, I appreciate that. I know
the other 2 were more muted in that sense for me. But
wow, I'm having your. I'm going to finish this off, Mike, by just saying thank you so much. It's so interesting to speak to you about what you're doing up there, and I realize I need to get down the hill and drink some more wine with you guys. It's high time. I saw that you got, was that today that you drank the 55
Yeah,
below
so
the roast?
I have a little 55 here. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's it's a whole different experience, but man, that's older than me by a long ways,
Hey, that's what I say too, by a long ways, by a long
Okay,
ways.
11 years, but
Yeah.
but
So we're the same age.
yeah. So the people were super, super sweet. They bring me a bottle of 90 Chateau Grand Puy, whatever, like
Lacoste?
anyway, Pauillac, and they're like, "You want this too?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, sure." But anyway, we get some special guests, as you know, up here. People that come up here usually earn it, Uh-oh.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to have your Petite Sirah on the way out. The wine is blowing my mind. I think, this wine, Mike, is just a powerhouse. The first retro Petite Sirah that I bought, SIRAH, was 05. I bought 605 and 606, and I still have a little bit of it. And those wines are going strong.
Yeah, they're not falling apart.
No, I mean, they're fantastic. So for all of you out there, if you get a chance to come up and see Mike and Kara at Dunn, it used to be easier before Mike started getting all these 98 to 100 point scores on the wine. Like, I was so pissed at Galoni for discovering Dunn, but he gives us nice press too, so I can't be too mad. But Mike, you've done wonders up there. These Merlots blew my mind. I'm gonna polish this off with a glass of wine. I want to say to all of the people that came on, I was it Wordsworth that said there's nothing so rare as a day in June. And so I can't thank everybody here enough for keeping us in business and coming on this journey with us with all these guests. We've had such a great time. I can't believe this is like our 16th webinar. We're a month away from doing another set of library wine with somebody hopefully equally as interesting as Mike Dunn. But Mike's like, that can't happen. But I hope you come up and see us. And remember, when you come up, like, people are bringing Mike 55 Bordeauxs. So let that be the bar.
I usually ask for ribs or ribeyes or something like that. But
that's right. Don't drop it on the driveway. But we'll send you guys out an email if you want to get on. Mike and Kara have a very limited mailing list. They make just a couple hundred cases of each of these wines at Retro, or they can give you an inside track to get on the waiting list for Dunn. But it's Mike, it has been such a pleasure. Thanks to everybody. Jamie, thank you for fielding the questions. Scott Castro is going to play us out, I think, with something from Lady Gaga, of all things. So I'll mute myself, but Mike, love you, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. The Arizona sky is burning in your eyes. You look at me and babe, I wanna catch on fire. It's buried in my soul. It's like California gold. Found a light in me that I couldn't find. When I'm all tuned to, then I can't find the words. And every time we say goodbye, baby, it hurts. When the sun goes down and the band won't play, I'll always remember us this way. Lovers in the night, poets trying to write. We don't know how to rhyme, but damn we'll try. And all I really know is where I wanna go. The part of me that you will never die. When I'm all tuned to, then I can't find the words. Well, every time we say goodbye, baby, it hurts. When the sun goes down and the band won't play, well, I'll always remember us there. this way. Well, I don't wanna be some memory. Ooh, 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 ooh. When I'm all toned up and I can't find words. Well, every time we say goodbye, baby, it hurts. When the sun goes down and the band won't play, well, I'll always remember us this way. When you look at me and the whole world fades, well, I'll always remember us this way. Ooh, ooh, ooh. All right.
Scott, that
Thanks,
was
Elton.
awesome.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, everybody. Thank
Good to meet you, Mike.
guys. Hey, Mike, have a great weekend. Give Kara a hug for me.